The Rainbow Revolutionary. Monday, the 10th of July. The steeple towered venerably and inspired Ryan upwards. His leather shoes beat a hollow rhythm around the spiral stairs as he climbed, and he glimpsed a progressively higher view of the Paris skyline through each hole carved in the stone wall. The tail end of the storm had retreated to the horizon, and between parting grey clouds, there opened chasms of late afternoon indigo and the faintest white glow of the winter sun. The first fairy lights of the evening were flickering to life over the city, in restaurants, museums, department stores, and apartment windows as their residents returned from a day's work. Little ants scurrying through the wet cobbled streets from heated office to heated homes, all in black, from umbrella to boots. The spirals constricted and steps steepened until Ryan emerged to a windy turret, alone at the highest point in Paris, above even the Tour Eiffel, which flashed a light in two ascending columns of orange globes as he beheld it. A majestic runway to heaven. But something else had caught his eye. As he pulled up his collar against the wind and waning drizzle, he leant forwards over the stone edifice and strained to see. But clear as day, though night now rapidly descended, amongst the sea of black ants was a single rainbow. And it was travelling against the tide. The stream of black umbrellas bustled north from the metro station exit, jostling in their rush, heads down and blinkered, shields raised to the world around. But the rainbow umbrella strolled south, open and carefree, twirling in the drizzle, destination undefined. And below the umbrella was a faceless face and rainbow boots. And in those moments, as dark definitively descended and obscured his view, Ryan vowed to find the Rainbow Revolutionary. Friday, the 14th of July. Passers-by were so shocked by the first gregarious individual that they were ashamed even to look on. Paris was a city of conformity, you see. You kept your hood down and laces tied and flowed with the stream. Tradition was everything, and that was that. So it was with a furrow of the brows and flare of the nostrils that the refined residents had shared their hushed judgment and disquiet with each other over the past week, as they witnessed the trend of rainbow vestment take on epidemic proportions. Nothing could be less Parisian. But the troubling thing was that it was not just a spate of rebellious youth. Some offenders were their contemporaries, age-old members of the bourgeoisie. With the Fête Nationale celebrations planned for that night, they couldn't help but think there was trouble brewing. Nationalists, subversives, an underground syndicate. Tuesday, the 11th of July. Ryan's heavy footfalls echoed through the deserted arches of the Pyramide metro station at 11:30 that night. A single cleaner, a tall young black man in blue uniform and fluoro vest, swept dust and empty wrappers into a heap at the foot of the stairs with headphones in and the tinny sound of rap music audible from across the tracks. He didn't even notice the Australian tourist. Another empty station, another vain search. A whole day passed without a clue. He'd barely seen a bright shirt, let alone full spectrum attire. To shake off the pressing weight of sleep, Ryan bounded up the stone steps two at a time, and as he did, a plan hatched in his mind. Wednesday, the 12th of July. A colourfully clad figure looked back at him from the mirror, and he felt utterly ridiculous. But so fixated had he become on finding the enigmatic nonconformist that he was willing to do whatever it might take. To find a revolutionary, he'd have to think like a revolutionary. He'd bought a canary yellow polo shirt, bright orange jacket, purple cashmere gloves, green felt socks, and rolled up the hems of his blue trousers to reveal long pink socks. He'd even found a knick-knack propeller cap at a costume store. With a deep breath, he opened his front door and stepped out onto Le Boulevard Voltaire and into the flow of Parisian midweek shoppers. He felt his cheeks heat immediately at the appalled looks besieging him from all sides, adding rosy red to the spectrum of his presence. Pulling his cap over his eyes, he quickened his pace. He watched his shoes clip-clop the cobbled street until, reaffirming to himself his whole purpose, he took a breath, slowed his gait, forced his gaze back up, and vowed to meet people fearlessly in the eye. As if the fates were already responding to his intention, he caught sight of a rainbow umbrella in a pharmacy window. He'd walked past this same shop every day for the 2 months he'd been living in Paris and had never seen it there before, but maybe he was just attuned to it now. He'd read something once about luminosity or the law of attraction. He had a spring in his step as the pharmacy door tinkled shut behind him and twirled his new shield against the volley of glares. Feeling safe and more confident under its aura, he skipped along through the bustling crowd, gaining momentum. The next sign stopped him in his tracks. Arc-en-ciel. The French word for rainbow was practically teasing him. So lustrously did it gleam in brightly painted letters on the storefront. Librairie ésotérique, spiritualité, art, bien-être, explained the subtitle engraved on the window. Yet another oddity he'd failed ever to notice. A metaphysical bookstore in the middle of the 11th arrondissement. He peered in the window to a display of crystals, chimes, tarot decks, singing bowls, lotus flowers, incense burners, hand-woven bags and cushions and string-bound diaries and tomes. He was drawn in by gravity. Mood lighting and the heady scent of Palo Santo gave him this distinct impression he'd stepped straight into a different dimension. The door swung silently shut behind him, and the congested muddle of Parisian traffic was instantly muted as faint strains of kirtan wafted through the air, mingling with the fragrant haze. Namaste, chanted a soulful voice beside him, fluttering his heart. He hadn't seen anyone. A young girl in a brown woven dress and sandals, and hair on her arms, though it wasn't unusual for Paris, stood up from kneeling by a bookshelf. He felt her slowly appraising his appearance from head to toe like an X-ray, and watched the knowing smile overcome her. "You're in the right place," she said serenely, slightly swaying at the hips now as if her body took pleasure from his presence. Ryan still remained silent. Not for lack of French. He just felt rooted to the moment, caught vaguely between daydream and déjà vu. She kept smiling, eyes twinkling. So to make conversation, he pointed to one of the artworks on the wall. It depicted a psychedelic background of bright orange, yellow, green, and purple flowers, with a single, contented-looking midnight blue cat, so vividly standing out in the foreground, it seemed to be perched on the frame. "What's the cat's name?" It was as if another voice had taken over his tongue, and he immediately wondered why I'd asked it. But the girl answered, "Lune," without skipping a beat. He gazed at the cat, its eyes shut and lips curled up in contentment, and again had a vague feeling he'd already somehow known that. At last the girl broke her gaze and, stepping slowly down an aisle of musical instruments, she idly brushed her hand over pan drums, rain sticks, vibraphone mallets and canna flutes. Her hips were still facing towards Ryan, and her head tilted to one side as she offered curiously, "You may be interested in our radiesthesia workshops we hold here on Friday nights." As Ryan remained silent, clearly at a loss, she explained, "It's the ancient art of attuning to our own vibrational field and picking up resonance with places and other people." For the third time, Ryan was overcome by the sense of having already known this. "I'll be there," he eventually said. Back out on the street, Ryan didn't have to pretend to ignore the Parisian's looks. He really was oblivious, so deep was he in a trance-like state. The simple repetitive mantra from the store's ambient music seemed to be looping in his head as clearly as if he was still inside. In his jacket pocket was a single small book he'd bought on impulse on the way out. Travelling Through Time. Thursday the 13th of July. He'd slept in his pink socks, and with every step along the tree-lined boulevards, he felt more and more in his own skin. Approaching Le Louvre, he stopped short and stared across Les Jardins des Tuileries, and sure enough, there it was. The walking rainbow, disappearing behind the inverted glass pyramid. He dashed between marble statues across the damp grass as a policeman blew his whistle, but didn't stop. Without knowing what he might say in introduction, he placed a gloved hand on the girl's shoulder from behind, and she spun around. At more of a loss than ever, Ryan wandered dejectedly along La Rive Gauche. The girl had been equally excited to see him and hoped that he had been the rainbow trendsetter. Apparently the fashion had exploded overnight, and novelty stores, alternative boutiques and op shops alike had exhausted their stocks. Sure enough, as he wandered the meandering alleys of the Quartier Latin, every turn brought another variation on the eccentric theme. This had been the meeting place of writers, artists and philosophers, of Hemingway, Picasso and Sartre, the global hub of intellectualism, the birthplace of counterculture. What would they make of this modern-day bohemianism? He stopped at a bakery and was handed a free croissant for being ultra chic. Friday the 14th of July. Friday night came and Ryan, out of habit now, left his apartment in his brilliant garb. The shopkeepers and restaurateurs on his route didn't react beyond their first glance as they rolled down their shutters and stacked up tables and chairs. He'd spent the morning trying to escape the National Day mayhem by taking a stroll through the Bois de Boulogne on the city's outskirts, but had found himself surrounded by rainbow-clad gypsies in their caravans. The stars twinkled above as he approached Arc-en-Ciel. The curtains were drawn, but it was illuminated from within, standing out from the other dark stores closed for the night. He hadn't even found out the shop assistant's name, he realised. He'd only asked about the cat. Lune. The bell tinkled and the door sealed the outside world shut behind him. A Himalayan salt lamp and one burning candle were all that lit the store, both coming from a back room where he could make out some muffled conversation. He found himself tiptoeing through the aisles past the sleeping angels and the meditating Buddhas. The girl, this time in a sparkling black gown, met his eyes as he entered the back room and quietly sat down on the last free cushion. but didn't pause in her whispered discussion with a grey-haired older man with round glasses, leaning in intently. Ryan glanced around the small circle, light and shadow from the candle dancing across the faces of a friendly-looking middle-aged lady with long unkempt hair and another young man around his age who gave him a nod. Neither looked particularly French, nor did they even seem to notice his gaudy attire. Maybe it was just the light. "Monsieur, would you like to introduce yourself?" the girl repeated, before he realized she was looking directly at him once more with a curious smile. "Ryan," he answered simply. "And of what have you been dreaming recently?" Catching on that this was the theme of tonight's discussion, he was surprised to find the answer flowing off his tongue. Of jungles, and gardens, and flowers, and animals, cats especially. Cats symbolize the flow of mystical energy. You should follow your intuition. Patience, independence, curiosity, and courage. Casting her eyes around the circle, she continued, "Now, in last week's session, we practiced harmonizing with inanimate objects. And I know you are all probably now doubting this very word, inanimate. From a light source to a solid rock, all has its vibration. This week, we will be investigating the harmony between each other." The group maintained a respectful silence. The long-haired lady simply smiled. "Please choose a partner." Facing the other young man sitting cross-legged opposite him, Ryan felt he was looking in a mirror. Synchronizing their breathing, as instructed, the rise and fall of their chests overshadowed any subtle differences in eye colour and facial features as his visual field began to blur in the dim light. The background clouded over, and gloomy surroundings dipped below his awareness, and the two eyes reflecting his own merged into one, boring a hole through the center of his forehead, exposing his raw, subconscious depths. As the girl struck the singing bowl with its dampened mallet and traced a circle around its interior, swelling its vibrating pitch as if taming a wild animal, his last vague thought, as he was drawn irresistibly into a trance-like state, was that he still didn't know her name. Aristide watched Ryan intently from the corner of her eye as she patted with cat-like sensitivity around the circle of cushions, raising and fading the singing bowl's frequency as she held it close to each of their ears in turn, tuning into the ripple of the sound waves through their energetic field, merging with their consciousness like a satellite settling into orbit. She kept her own energy reserved, just watching, and let the sound guide their journey. The Australian tourist's head swayed and eyes were glazed, spiraling, mesmerized, hypnotized, deep in the jungle, lost in space. From the moment she'd first felt the young man's presence enter the store, she'd sensed an incredibly powerful aura and energy of which she knew he wasn't aware. A geospatial resonance with the ley lines that ran below Paris, directly beneath this store. Her gut told her there was no use trying to direct him or interfere in any way. She could only watch, with quiet anticipation, whatever may unfold. Ryan's floating awareness followed the pitch of the singing bowl up the misty mountain path, meandering its way through each twist and turn, and emerging to the summit as the top note rang out across the sky. Through the parting mist emerged a clear, expansive vista and crystalline rainbow. He traced it to its base at the foot of the distant hill, L'Arc de Triomphe. A plunging harmonic brought him back into his body. He had no sense of how much time had passed, but could feel the eyes of the others on him and knew he was the last to return. Or indeed, had he been the only one on that journey at all? Head down in exhaustion, Ryan ambled aimlessly through the streets. He vaguely watched his green shoes step in front of one another, making little splashes in the puddles between cobblestones, reflecting orange streetlights in wavy patterns, not even bothering to put up his umbrella against the drizzle. Though his mind was a million miles away, his inner compass must have been active as he found himself in the crowded expanse of Les Champs-Élysées. And with each step towards L'Arc de Triomphe, he felt his head rise, as if being magnetized. The crescent moon peeped out from behind a cloud. A levity took hold of him, steering him straight. His footsteps quickened. A smile, inexplicable, broke across his face. He puffed up his chest and sprang open the umbrella, twirling it now. Skipping along against the tide of black jackets, a song entered his mind and he hummed along to its tune as he danced in the rain. Hold me close and hold me fast, the magic spell you cast, this is la vie en rose. Heart beating faster, he entered La Place de l'Étoile, the star, juncture of the 12 avenues radiating from its center, and the triumphal arch towered before him. And as he passed beneath it, a jet formation shot low overhead, trailed by smoke in blue, white, and red. Le Tour Eiffel sparkled to life, and rainbow fireworks erupted from its peak, and he looked northeast, to the distant white basilica overlooking the city from the hilltop, and realized the rainbow revolutionary he had seen was himself.